In Ecuador, the government declared a state of emergency after 6.5 earthquake in Guayas. Authorities report at least 14 dead and nearly 500 injured. In Russia, Chinese President Xi Jinping described his visit as productive and said it will provide new momentum for the healthy and stable development of bilateral relations. And in Mozambique, cholera cases are increasing rapidly 1 week after cyclone Freddy made landfall for a second time. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Ecuador, 489 people were injured in the 6.5 magnitude earthquake that took place this Saturday in the province of Guayas, in the coastal area of Ecuador, and which left 14 dead until Monday. According to the report, 1,108 people were affected by the telluric movement, while 237 houses were affected, in addition to 148 educational units, 33 public goods, 48 health centers, among other damages. The director of the Geophysical Institute, Mario Ruiz, explained that the earthquake, which also had repercussions in Peruvian territory, occurred due to the fracturing of the upper part of the Nazca Plate. The president of Ecuador, Guillermo Lasso, declared a state of exception without restriction of rights as one of the actions to attend areas affected by the earthquake and rains as a consequence of the winter season. The earthquake of March 18, 2023, became the strongest telluric movement that Ecuador has endured since the earthquake that hit Marabi and Esmeraldas on April 16, 2016. The Third World Forum on Human Rights started on Monday in Argentina's capital, Buenos Aires. The event will hold out between March 20th and the 24th and will culminate with the accompaniment of the March for Day of Memory, Truth and Justice. The opening ceremony is expected to be attended by President Alberto Fernandez, as well as by the President of the Grandmothers of Plaza de Mayo and Honorary President of the Forum, Stella de Carlotto. As part of the activities, organizations, artists, and activists will remember the late President of the Mothers Plaza de Mayo Association, Hebe de Bonafini, in an open talk on Tuesday. The renowned fighter against the crimes of the last military dictatorship in this country passed away last November 20th at the age of 93. Her ashes were placed in Plaza de Mayo, where she went for more than 4 decades to demand justice for the more than 30,000 detained, disappeared, tortured, and murdered during the dictatorship. President Lula da Silva will present on Tuesday the More Health for Brazil program aimed at increasing patient care in a ceremony at the Planalto Palace, the seat of the executive power. Official sources confirmed that under the name of More Doctors, the initiative instituted in 2013 in Dilma Rousseff's government will be retaken, aimed to increase the number of doctors, mainly in small cities in the countryside. The Ministry of Health promises to give priority to national doctors and with the performance of other specialists in the health area such as dentists, nurses, and social workers in the teams. The Chief Minister of the Presidential Communications Secretariat, Paulo Pimenta, recalled that more doctors became responsible for 100% of primary care in 1,039 municipalities, hired more than 18,000 professionals, and benefited 63 million Brazilians. Dominican Republic's Attorney General's office announced the arrest of 19 former high-ranking government officials linked to former President Danilo Medina on corruption charges as part of Operation Calamar, or Squid Operation, executed after a complex investigation carried out by the Attorney General's office specialized in prosecution of administrative corruption. 40 raids were carried out, which resulted in the arrest of 19 people who were brought before the courts, including 3 former ministers of Medina's government. The judicial body pointed out that the accused are charged with crimes of criminal association, embezzlement, official collusion, falsification of public and private documents, bribery, and illicit campaign financing on an unprecedented scale, money laundering, among others. Let's take a short break, but first remember you can follow us on TikTok at the account at teleSUR English, in which you'll be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back from the south. Russian President Vladimir Putin had an informal meeting with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping, who arrived in Moscow on Monday morning on a state visit. At the beginning of his speech, Putin praised the economic and political system of the Asian country, valuing the outstanding scientific and economic progress, which is very effective. According to the Russian president, China follows the principles of justice and the fundamental principles of international law. The Russian president pointed out that he has examined in depth the peace plan for Ukraine presented by Beijing and informed his Chinese counterpart that it will be discussed during the visit. For his part, Xi Jinping expressed his gratitude and described the relations with Russia as excellent.
We have carefully studied your proposals for resolving the acute crisis in Ukraine. Of course, we will have the opportunity to discuss these issues. We know that you act based on the principles of justice and respect for the fundamental provisions of international law.
I know that a presidential election will be held in your country next year. Thanks to your strong leadership, in recent years, Russia has made significant progress in achieving success and prosperity of the country. I am sure that the Russian people will strongly support you in your strong and good undertakings.
Russian President Vladimir Putin said that his country, as well as those of Africa, the Middle East and Latin America, are opposed to a colonial ideology and that together they are the world's majority. He made the comments at an international parliamentary conference, Russia, Africa in a Multipolar World. Putin said Africa will become one of the leaders of the new multipolar world order. Putin also announced the cancellation of the debt of more than $20 billion to African countries. Putin said that the turnover of mutual trade with the African region is growing every year and that in 2022 it reached almost $18 billion, and he pledged to provide free food to needy African countries if the grain agreement is not renewed within 60 days.
Guided primarily by the needs of African countries, Russia recently agreed to prolong for another 60 days the agreement secured in Istanbul on the export of Ukrainian food supplies through the Black Sea and the unblocking of Russian agricultural exports and supplies of fertilizers. At the same time, we insist that the substance of this deal is primarily in the interest of African and other developing countries.
Poland's defense ministry informed on Monday that a new U.S. military base will be opened in the Central European country starting this Tuesday. The brand new facility will be located near the city of Poznan on the banks of the Warta River in the west. Polish Defense Minister Mariusz Błaszczak is expected to take part in the inauguration ceremony. Analysts recall that the headquarters of the U.S. 5th Corps has already been established in Poland, and about 10,000 U.S. troops are already in this territory, twice as many as before 2022. Recently, the Polish Minister of Defense stressed that his country would spend the necessary funds to expand the U.S. military presence and specified that airfield for F-35 aircraft and firing range for U.S. multiple rocket launchers are being built. The new enclave is considered the 8th permanent military base for U.S. troops on the European continent. Workers' unions in France called for more tougher and longer strikes after President Emmanuel Macron's administration forced through an unpopular pension reform last week without a parliamentary vote. The decision to force the pension legislation through the lower house of the National Assembly without a vote last Thursday sparked protests over the weekend and outrage about a maneuver widely seen as undemocratic. In this sense, energy, transport, education, and waste collection unions announced several mobilizations and strikes that will last until March 23rd. Likewise, unions also asked for a responsible attitude to avoid any violent incident during the demonstrations and called to avoid a spontaneous protest against the government. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad advances his agenda during an official visit to the United Arab Emirates to strengthen bilateral relations and cooperation. On Sunday, al-Assad was welcomed at the airport by his Emirati counterpart Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, who accompanied him to the Al Watan Palace in Abu Dhabi, the capital, where the welcoming ceremonies were held. The two leaders held official talks to discuss historic bilateral relations, ways to strengthen them, and economic cooperation. They also discussed positive developments taking place in the region and the importance of taking advantage of them to achieve stability, greater security and prosperity. This is the third visit of the Syrian leader abroad in less than a month and the second since the outbreak of the war in 2011. The first was in March 2022. teleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries through StarSat, dial 461 and enjoy our Latin American alternative broadcast. One final short break and we'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back from the south. 1 week after Cyclone Freddy made landfall for a second time in Mozambique, cholera is growing rapidly for children and families. Flooding caused by Cyclone Freddy, compounded by interruptions of water, sanitation and hygiene services, is driving a rapid acceleration in cholera case numbers, with reported cases have almost quadrupled to almost 10,700 since early February, and more than 2,300 cases have been reported during the past week alone. A total of 36 districts across 8 provinces of Mozambique are currently experiencing active cholera outbreaks. In addition to the risk of cholera, UNICEF is greatly concerned about the strong likelihood of an increase in cases of other waterborne diseases like diarrhea, as well as malaria, diseases which number among the leading causes of child mortality. UNICEF's funding requirements are more than $60 million to respond to the needs of children and families affected by Cyclone Freddy. On Tuesday, activists around the world marked the 20th anniversary of the U.S. invasion of Iraq, a military action that triggered an 8-year war that left some 655,000 civilians dead. On March 20, 2003, U.S. troops entered Iraqi territory to supposedly liberate this oil-rich country from the administration of President Saddam Hussein, who the U.S. said had links to the terrorist organization Al-Qaeda and possessed an arsenal of weapons of mass destruction, something Washington never found. During the war, U.S. soldiers committed multiple human rights violations. After overthrowing Hussein's government on April 9th, U.S. President George W. Bush declared his country's victory. However, the U.S. military did not leave the Arab country under the pretext of fighting the rise of armed fundamentalist groups. 20 years later, some 2,500 U.S. troops remain in Iraq. The war destroyed its national infrastructure of sanitation, electricity, and water, leaving many Iraqi citizens without access to these basic commodities. The country lost an immense cultural heritage by the looting and destruction of valuable cultural properties. On Monday, the Patriarchate of Jerusalem has issued an appeal for international protection of holy sites following an attack by fundamentalist Israelis on a church in occupied East Jerusalem on Sunday. According to a statement issued by the Patriarchate of Jerusalem, terrorist attacks by radical Israeli groups targeting churches, cemeteries, and Christian properties, in addition to physical and verbal abuse against Christian clergy, have become almost daily. Sunday's attack on worshippers on one of the Asian churches in occupied East Jerusalem is the third one this year, after a Jewish-American tourist vandalized a statue at the Catholic Church inside the Old City near Bab al-Asbat. The Patriarchate called upon the international community to provide security and protection to the Christians of Jerusalem and their holy places, including the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Some 230,000 Jewish settlers illegally live in occupied East Jerusalem. Israeli-Palestinian peace negotiations have been stalled since 2014, and Israeli-Palestinian violence has worsened this year. We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For teleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.